Morning, guys. It's Tuesday, November 4th, 5:23 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are mixed this morning. December corn futures down 2 cents at 432 and a quarter. January soybeans down 7 at 1127 and a quarter. December Chicago wheat up 3.5 cents at 547. December Kansas City wheat up 1 and a quarter at 533. December spring wheat is up 1.5 at 560. Mackenzie, before we start today, I think we should revisit and review the Brooke Rollins interview. How do you think it went?
I think it went really well. I think it was pretty informative. I obviously would have liked to have more time to chat with her.
We could have used about 3 hours,
Mhm.
honestly. Like, we had enough questions and enough there were so many follow-up questions to the stuff that we did ask that I didn't get to ask. But given the time restraint, that was about the best that we could do. I'll tell you guys a quick story of how this all kind of developed. So I had talked with the secretary in late September about doing an interview on the podcast. And she said, "Yep, we'll do it. We'll do the interview. Let's get it scheduled." So as I told you guys, they scheduled it. They rescheduled it 4 or 5 times. And I had kind of given up on the whole thing. And then last week, Thursday, Trump and G get together, strike some deal about soybeans, right? And who gets a hold of me the next morning and wants to talk? Brooke Rollins. If I was a politician, I'd do the same damn thing. I'd wait for the good news and then I'd say, "Yeah, I'll do the show. Now I got something to talk about." So I understand that piece of it. Um, as far as the questions and the answers, so I had to kind of scramble to put together the questions because we had a complete list of questions that we were going to ask, but they were put together 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the news obviously has changed. So when I got the alert Friday morning, hey, we're taping this thing like 4 hours from now, I sent out a text to our premium crowd. I said, send me your new questions. And I had 2 hours basically to comb through them and say, this is the stuff I'm going to ask her in 30 minutes. And I apologize, guys, that I didn't get to all of your questions. Of course, we had thousands of questions come in, and we got to do 7 or 8 of them probably.
Mhm.
I stuck to what I thought was like the high level, most important stuff. We did trade, we did direct payments, we did input costs, we did the beef situation. There's a lot of things I wish I could have asked or had time to follow up. In terms of her answers, were you satisfied with the answers that you got?
No. I mean,
Please elaborate.
oh yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too critical, but I felt like at times there were just a lot of filler, just a lot of words, a lot of stuff that we already knew, a lot of fluff, I guess you could say. And I definitely felt that the questions that were asked about the cattle market were completely dodged.
I thought, as far as high-ranking political officials goes, I think she was about as down to earth as you're ever going to get from somebody in her position. So it was probably about what I expected. I think,
Mhm.
like, there are some questions that she just can't answer, and some of our stuff was like, hey, justify what Donald Trump did. Good luck with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a hell of a job and a hell of a thing to ask. So I don't know. I have mixed thoughts on it, but I wanted to kind of tell you guys a story. Okay, with that, let's go into our first story this morning. We've got more soybean news, of course.
So, Chinese buyers recently booked 20 cargoes of Brazilian soybeans, with half scheduled for December delivery and the remainder for March through July shipment. The increase in buying comes as Brazilian beans are now priced below U.S. Gulf supplies amid expectations that the newly negotiated U.S.-China trade truce will lead to a resumption of U.S. soybean purchases. The market is now awaiting official confirmation from China regarding reductions in import tariffs on U.S. beans. On Monday, soybean futures rallied, with the January 26 contract rising 19 cents to settle at 11.34 per bushel, marking its highest level since early July 2024.
The reports would indicate that China has bought U.S. soybeans. They bought some last week, maybe some more this week. We don't know the exact totals. Some people think it's just a couple 100,000 metric tons. Maybe it's more than that. You look at the price action, and it would certainly indicate to me that there's some business going on behind closed doors, not just the board, but you look at bases, like bases out of the PNWs moved. It's gotten better. Basis in some of the Northern Plains areas has tightened up a little bit. So there are a lot of indicators that there's some business going on. So what's happened is just, late last week, China bought some beans and U.S. beans got more expensive. Brazilian basis kind of fell off, and now Brazil's competitive again. So China, I don't know which way they're going to go. Are they gonna pay up to buy U.S. beans to fulfill this agreement that they've made with the United States that they haven't signed yet? I don't know. 12 million metric tons before January. They're not even a tenth of the way there. They've got a lot more buying to do if they're going to hit that. But the market is acting as if this is like the real deal. We've rallied $1.23 in the January 26th soybean contract from the low that was posted in October. Very clearly a big time breakout from that wedge pattern that had been in place for months. And you look at the weekly chart, I mean, this is the best that the market has traded since July of 2024. This week, we got our close above key technical resistance last week. We had a key reversal to the upside on the monthly chart. The October bar was an outside up bar. So it looks and feels like China's going to buy some beans and is buying some beans, but Brazil's gotten competitive. So it's going to get a little bit more interesting, I guess.
U.S. soybean shipments were disappointing last week. USDA reported that 35 million bushels of beans were inspected for export during the week ending October 30th. The print was down 17% compared to the prior week and down a whopping 58% versus the same week last year. Corn shipments came in strong at 66 million bushels. The print was up 34% compared to the previous week and up an impressive 109% versus the same week last year. Wheat shipments were reported at 13 million bushels. The print was up 30% versus the previous week and up 61% compared to the same week last year.
Soybean shipments are very bad. China's name was nowhere to be found in the export inspections report, not for any of the major cash crops that we grow here in the United States. We think that that's coming. We think that we'll see some beans shipped to China here in the next, month or two, I guess. I'm hoping sooner than that. But that print last week, under 1 million metric tons, was the worst seasonally since the 11-12 marketing year. So we should be at, 2.5 million metric tons a week here, and we're not even at 1 million. We got a lot of catching up to do, certainly. The corn numbers look good, but this soybean number is problematic. I don't know how this chart's going to look at the end of the day. I mean, if China actually does buy this 12 million, you can see this like contra-seasonal rise into December, January. Maybe that's something that we see. It would be an odd-looking thing to see on the chart, though.
China may be returning to the U.S. wheat market. Over the weekend, Chinese importers inquired about U.S. wheat cargoes for delivery between December and February. China hasn't purchased U.S. wheat since early October of last year. Analysts view the potential purchases, which would include SRW and HRW wheat, as a goodwill gesture rather than an economically driven move. Traders estimate the volume could range from 240,000 metric tons to 400,000. The news caused Chicago wheat futures to rise on Monday, with the December 25 contract gaining nearly 10 cents to close around $5.44 per bushel, the highest level in more than 3 months. Chinese authorities have not yet confirmed any details regarding the inquiries.
Yeah, best trade since July in this December SRW wheat contract. We've rallied 58 cents from the October low to the overnight high. So it's acted a hell of a lot better. The market, I don't know if somebody knows that China has bought wheat, or if the large speculators or the funds who are probably still net short the wheat market to a significant degree, maybe they just want out and they don't want to wait around to find out if China's going to buy any material amount of U.S. wheat. So for the moment, this is like probably call it a short covering deal, but maybe somebody knows something that I don't know.
If you guys have not checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell our viewers about some of our recent premium videos?
Great stuff and super informative stuff with Chris Barron yesterday. We had a question or a comment come in from a subscriber who had an issue on his farm. He had a grain site or a bin site. I think it was burned down. He had a dryer fire, and he found out that the replacement cost for this particular site was nowhere near what he was insured for. So Chris went over farm insurance, not crop insurance, like insurance on your grain bins, on your implements, on liability, all that stuff. And in Chris's experience, most farmers have significant gaps in their insurance coverage that they're not aware of. Everything from what we mentioned, like a grain bin site, to liability coverage, to all sorts of different things. And he made a whole bunch of documents available, stuff that you should look at. This is something that needs to be reviewed on like an annual basis. Way the hell more complicated than I would have ever guessed. Jim Urio was on Friday. We did Macro Friday. Jim is a fan favorite. He's a professional interest rate trader, has been for decades. And he tells us about what's going on in the world, macroeconomic environment, the economy, policy, all that stuff. Worst consumer sentiment in decades. That's what Kraft Heinz said, because people aren't buying consumer staples anymore. That was not in the way that they used to or regularly would. So lots of good stuff with Jim. Today, we've got some grain marketing stuff. If you're seeking a simpler approach to your cash grain marketing, you should check my stuff out. I advise cash sales broken down by crop year, and percentage. I don't do anything with futures or options or fancy strategies. It's just, hey, I'm going to sell this percentage on this day. Here's my price, and we're going to go on to the next sale. If you want to see that stuff, guys, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. This is a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel at any time. There's no other fee, no other obligation. Nobody will try to sell you anything else. I don't want to talk to you on the phone. I'm never going to call you. We'll respond to your texts and emails. I know you guys are busy. Everything is super easily accessible on your phone. You can sign up on your phone in about 30 seconds. All the emails are just quick to open, quick to play the videos. Absolute piece of cake. Give that deal a shot today.
Brazilian soybean planting has fallen behind schedule. According to well-followed private group Ag Rural, as of last Thursday, 47% of the crop was planted, an 11% increase from the prior week. However, during the same week last year, 54% of the crop was planted. Hot, dry weather has slowed planting progress and could lead to replanting in some regions. Ag Rural also reported that planting of Brazil's first corn crop is 60% complete, slightly ahead of the 59% recorded at this time last year. Meanwhile, StoneX raised its forecast for Brazil's soybean crop by 0.1% to 178.9 million metric tons, but lowered its projection for the nation's second corn crop by 4.1% to 107 million metric tons.
So planting a little bit slower than they'd like, perhaps. And the last 7 days have been drier than normal. Brazilian soybean areas, according to our friends at Crop Profit, saw only 62% of their normal rainfall over the last 7 days. And as we've discussed, in Brazil, you need some rain during planting, or else you risk replant, emergence failure. And apparently they've got a little bit of that going on. It happens every year. It's an annual event. I'm not overly concerned about it. I don't think the market is either. Over the next 7 days, based on Euro model data, Brazilian soybean areas should see 103% of normal rainfall. So that's very good and not anything that's worrisome. Same thing during the 8 to 14 day period, normal rainfall expected. Although I think that the forecast that was out last week that the computer models generated was a little bit off, because they were talking normal rainfall and they didn't quite get that.
U.S. corn and soybean harvests are nearing completion. According to a Reuters poll of 9 analysts, as of Sunday, the U.S. corn harvest was 83% complete compared to 91% at the same time last year. Soybean harvest is estimated at 91% complete versus 94% a year ago. Analyst estimates for corn ranged from 78% to 90%, while soybean estimates ranged from 88% to 94%. Mostly dry conditions across the Corn Belt over the last week helped accelerate harvest progress. Crop progress reports remain suspended, of course, because of the ongoing government shutdown. However, a crop production and WASDE report are scheduled to be released on November 14th.
God bless these analysts giving us the numbers while the government is closed, right? What would we do without them? Yeah, we're getting close to wrapping up. I mean, I don't have any issues with these numbers.
StoneX has raised its outlook for this season's U.S. corn crop. The firm now projects the average corn yield at 186 bushels per acre, up slightly from 185.9 bushels per acre in its October estimate. Total corn production is forecast at 16.75 billion bushels compared to 16.74 billion previously. For soybeans, StoneX trimmed its yield estimate to 53.6 bushels per acre, down from 53.9. Soybean production is forecast at 4.3 billion bushels versus the prior estimate of 4.32 billion.
So these StoneX numbers are the result of a survey, and it's the same survey that they've done all year. It's the same survey that they've been doing for 3 or 4 decades at StoneX. They call their customers, who are mainly grain buyers, they're country elevators, they're commercial sources. They talk to their agronomy departments. Their agronomy departments talk to the farmers, and they come up with these numbers. That being said, based on what I understand and what I've been told, I think these numbers are too high. I think the trade personally is working with a corn yield number in the 182 to 183 range. I think the soybean number could be maybe close to what they've got here, 53.6. Maybe it leans closer to 53 or upper 52s. But I think the corn number 186, just based on what I know, and I don't do strong opinions about the size of the crop, but people tell me that we're trading something smaller than 186. That's my 2 cents on that situation. What did cattle do yesterday?
Cattle futures were higher. Live cattle were 207 to 272 higher, and feeders saw gains ranging from 370 all the way up to 610. Box beef prices were also higher. Choice was up $1.12 at 379.25, and select was up $128 at 359.93.
Stock market's getting beat up a little bit. The S&P is down 70 points. That's about 1%. The Dow's down 330. Treasuries are up just a little bit. Crude oil is down 87 cents, and the December WTI at 60.18. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back on Wednesday.